Be real.
Hello, how are you?
It's great. How are you, sister?
I'm good.
Did you hear what I
I'm
said?
good. I'm sorry.
I think it was still connecting when uh when I said, "Is it time for us to be real?"
It is. I'm getting over the flu, so I sound not great.
That's okay. I had pneumonia last week, so I
Oh
understand.
God. I actually thought I had pneumonia, and that's why I went to the doctor and found out I had flu. You feeling better?
Yes,
Good.
100%.
Good.
Had personal records on my back and bicep workout this morning.
I'm going to the orthopedic surgeon tomorrow for my knee because I think I have knee surgery. I've not been at the gym in a while, so I'm jealous to hear that. Um,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
that's okay. That's okay.
I
It
will tell you that
happens.
I took some time off at the end of last year, and I'm 44. I think we're like close in age, and uh, never take off. Like if you have to take off because of an injury or a setback, that's the only excuse. Never take off because it was hard to get back into it. So now I'm like 12 weeks in. So now the muscles are showing, the veins that used to be there have come back out, the fat is gone. I call it the X, where my shoulders are broad, my waist is small, and my thighs are wide, right? So I got the X superhero shape back. I even have I'm sure I was gonna say believe it or not, but you would believe it, I'm sure. I have an Under Armour shirt that is all like navy blue here, and it kind of comes down like this, and then it goes all the way down like this, and then all the arms and the shoulders are white, and I can put it on, and it's skin tight, and it's got my Hurricane logo,
I
so
bet.
it's like Superman. So I'm Steve the Hurricane in my Hurricane, Under Armour shirt. So
I bet. Oh.
yeah,
Oh, you're making me want
12
to get back
weeks,
to the gym. All right. So there are people coming in.
awesome.
We will get started in just a few minutes. I got about my dogs are obviously excited about this. I don't know if you can hear them. We got about 15 questions. I doubt we'll be able to go through all of these, but we'll start and kind of see where
Wow.
it goes. Yeah.
Okay.
Got some good response. And then just for everybody that is coming on now, this will be, I'll say this again before we get started or once we get started, but it will be recorded, which I know you're recording, but I'll record on my side. And then we will send it out probably tomorrow with the recording for everybody as well. And then if you have questions, everyone can use the Q&A to ask questions because we want this to be a dialogue and a conversation. We don't want to present anything. Okay. All right, so let's give people just a few minutes to come in here. Anything on your side? Housekeeping things you want to mention before we get going?
I mean, everything is just going great right now. You heard me talk about how I had
I'm
pneumonia
gonna close my
last
door
week.
because my dog is barking. Hold on.
It's okay. But
Yeah.
while, everyone who is here listening right now, I just want to just say that, you have these moments where you're kind of like beat down. And I was on the phone with the owner of Nevitt 1804, which is the rum company that I'm on the board of directors of, literally like 20 minutes ago. And I was saying to him that I feel like everybody I know who's a business owner right now is in this state of grind, 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 grind. Like we're all just going, 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 and there's no time to come up for air, and there's no time to breathe, and we're all getting sick. I had pneumonia last week. Becky's sick now with the flu. And I will say the grind is worth it, and continue to stick with it, and stay positive, and stay motivated, and stay
Save this
focused,
for
and
the
stay
webinars,
energized.
Steve.
What?
Save this for the webinar.
Oh, I thought there's people live right now listening.
There are, but we haven't
Yeah,
started
well, I'm
recording
talking
yet.
to them. Everybody else is joining. Screw those guys. They're late.
They're
Everybody who's
late.
on
That's
time,
their
they should
fault.
get some takeaways,
All right,
You
keep
start
going
on
then.
time.
Keep going.
Yeah. But stay the course, stay the grind, because the juice is worth the squeeze. I posted this thing yesterday on social media, and it was a great picture, and I love it. It says if you want to be in the 1%, you can't do what the 99% are doing. The 99% are complaining about what's happening. The 99% are worried about what's going on. The 99% have, apprehension about everything, and they won't take the risk, and they won't put forth the effort. And there's always a reason why you can't. There's always a reason why you can't do something. But the 1%, those of us who are doers, those of us who find a way to overcome any obstacle and continue to move forward and persevere, there's a reason why we're the 1%, because we're the exceptional. And you're not exceptional because none of us are smarter than anybody else or whatever. What we do is we have the work ethic and we have the due diligence and we put in our time and we grind and grind and grind. And then it happens. And then everybody says, oh, you're an overnight success. You're an instant this and that. Nah, that's crap. Nobody is an overnight success. Maybe the success happened in one night with years of preparation and planning for that one night, but that's what happens. That's how it is. So,
All right.
I got the energy today. I am.
All right. Well, you're going to lead the energy because I don't. So,
Woo!
All right. Let's get going. We're going to record this. A lot of people sign up that are going to probably just listen to the recording. So let's get going. And I'll hand it over to you for, all right. All right. Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. I am pinching myself when I'm about to say, but the fact that we have a legend here joining us today, this is a dream. We have Steve the Hurricane that will be joining us. Yep, there it is. Steve and I met a while back, and we've been wanting to do something together, and we were talking the other day or before we launched this about what we should do, and this is a topic that I think a lot of you are feeling right now. So we got several questions from everybody, and we're literally, if you've been on these real talks before, they're just conversations. There's no presentations, and we want everybody to feel part of this. So definitely feel free to use your Q&A if questions come up. If you have follow-up questions, be a part of this conversation. This will be recorded if you have to hop off early. So we will be sending it out, but I'm going to hand it over to Steve for an intro, and then we will just get rocking on these questions because I don't think there's any way we're going to get through all of these.
Yeah, no, I mean, everybody, just thank you so much for joining us live. Those of you who are listening later, I hope you get a lot out of this. When Becky and I were planning this, I was thinking about what's going on today. And the reason why we decided on this topic is because it's just so relevant, whether you are getting paid from the Veterans Administration, the VA, if you're a Medicaid business, or if you have any type of government funding that your business is relying on for income. There's a lot of people who are worried right now. And so, I was like, why don't we talk about how can we embrace what's going on in the government, whether you not politically, because I don't care about politics. I really don't.
We're going to kick you off if you start talking about politics. We're just going to kick you off.
Exactly. And like the way I view politics, it doesn't matter who's in office. I own my business. I control my business, and I'm going to thrive either way. Like if the rules change with how I got to do business, I'll adapt and I'll figure out a way to thrive. That's who I am. That's how the 1% I was talking about before we started. That's what they do. They figure out a way. But with all of the stuff that's going on, there's a lot of fear and anxiety. So how do we turn this fear and anxiety and channel it into a positive to be able to capitalize and be able to move forward in confidence? And so that's why we came up with this topic for us to discuss today.
Yeah. Any other background intro you want to, for people that are not familiar with you, which I'm sure everybody is, but.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know who I am, Home Care Evolution, that's my company. Steve the Hurricane is my name. It is a registered trademark. If you Google search Steve the Hurricane, I literally am the only legal one in the world. And you will find hundreds of videos on YouTube. You probably have read one of my magazines. You can subscribe from the magazines. I'm going to talk about that at some point. You might even have read my book, Why We Care, because I love your mission, Becky, with everything that you talk about, where it's like, I want to scale my business and I want to grow it to $10 million and beyond. Well, don't forget about, Roberta. Don't forget about Mr. Smith. And he doesn't care about the $10 million. He cares about the care that's being given. That's my mission. That has been my mission since 2012. So while we scale and grow, let's not forget and lose sight of the focus that every person that we're taking care of, we're making an impact. And I've been saying this for 13 years now. If a patient passes away in the comfort of their home because of what we're doing, that's a successful outcome. The person didn't have to go to the hospital. They didn't have to pass away in a nursing home. They didn't have to pass away in a hospital bed or whatever. They passed away in the comfort of their home because of what we're doing as an industry. That's a blessing. That's a luxury. That's what we all collectively get to do for our patients each and every single day. So, I love our industry.
You have to love it to be successful. That's for sure. I always tell people if you're doing this solely for the money, maybe you should look at different industries. All right. There's a lot of money to be made, but if you're doing this purely for the money, there's a lot of easier ways to make money, I should say. All right, let's dive in. So we got a bunch of questions. We're just going to dive right in and we're just going to have conversations about them. So the first question I wanted to go through is I built my agency around Medicaid clients for years. How do I even begin shifting my mindset toward private pay without feeling like I'm abandoning my mission?
Do you want me to go ahead and start?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
You're the rock
to that
star.
person, I feel you, and I truly understand where you're coming from. And I'm glad that this is the first. I had no idea this was the first question because I was prepared, right? So this was an issue that came out in the summer of 2023. The lady on the cover is Rochelle Wilkins. Rochelle Wilkins is from North Carolina. Rochelle Wilkins was a Medicaid agency for 20 years. Now, in the 13th, 14th year of her 20-year journey from when she wrote this article, she was a Medicaid business, and the government in the state of North Carolina completely changed the labor law reimbursed with how much you have to pay minimum wage. So here she goes. She is a 100% Medicaid business caring for over 100 patients, and the labor went up so much so that her profit margin went down to like 10%. 10 cents, 10 cents. So they didn't increase the Medicaid reimbursement, but she had like, say $1.25 an hour, $1.50 an hour profit margin. It went down to 10 cents. And she goes, what am I going to do? I'm about to lose all of my clients. I'm about to lose all of my caregivers. There's no revenue left over. And she was freaking out with this law that was coming in place. Her story, and then she goes into it in great detail. She's a person of faith. I'm a person of faith. I'm also a minister. And, Jesus is my Lord and Savior. I have no problem saying that. And I'm proud of that. And she said a prayer one night crying. And she came after her prayer. She went online. She researched how to grow an agency, and she found some of my videos. And she ended up coming to one of my boot camps, and we did a lot of work together. And over the next 12 months, while this labor law change went into effect, because nothing happens overnight, it was the news that came, and then she had like 12 months to adapt to it. She was able to grow her private pay simultaneously with the Medicaid. And so this is what I would recommend to that person who is listening here. You have your Medicaid. Don't stop taking Medicaid. Keep taking Medicaid. That's what you're doing. That's what your business is. But you can also grow and take care of private at the same time. And when you grow your private and properly leverage your Medicaid revenue, your Medicaid business, leverage it. Go to a hospital. When you walk into a hospital, I've walked into a hospital with Rochelle. You walk into a hospital and you can accept the Medicaid, that social worker is automatically she's going to have 3 people sitting there right now that could use your services. And she's going to make those referrals to you. Leverage that to get an in-service lunch and start talking about your private pay side. And then that social worker who's referring you the Medicaid is also going to refer you the private, and then you grow the both simultaneously. That is what I do with so many of my Medicaid clients, so that this way, if a government regulation comes in and it changes things, you can't control that. That you can't control. But if I have private pay revenue coming in at the same time, I can supplement and absorb some of the changes to the funding from the private pay side of business. That's the model that I've been working with folks for 13 years on, and it helps in every single market in the United States.
So that brings me then to like, how do those conversations from your perspective differ? Like, how do you change? Because I think that's a conversation I see a lot is if they're very focused on Medicaid and they know those conversations, what's going to be different, right? How are you positioning it differently to appeal to the private pay market then?
Right. So the way that you position it, we need to get sales processes. That's where when I look at like the Medicaid business, because there's no sale involved, there is no closing process. There isn't a closing person. There is no, so we don't even have a price point because it's all reimbursed. Medicaid is all insurance pay. So that's the piece that we have to add to the organization. We already know how to staff cases. We already know how to hire caregivers. We already know how to manage the care of the patient. We just have to add some sales components to it. What is our closing process like? Maybe we might have to make some brochures. Maybe we have to change some of the verbiage on our website. When it comes to the business development side, we have to create somebody who's going out and going into the places that are already feeding us. Go past the MCOs, but go right to the social workers, right to the discharge planners directly. Introduce yourself as the Medicaid provider in the area and talk about how we also have a private pay arm. When we do that, it takes time. It's not overnight. However, it can be done relatively quickly because you already have the infrastructure in place. So all we have to do is invest in getting the training, invest in getting the sales side of things going, and then you'll start getting referrals almost immediately, because there are a lot of folks who don't qualify for Medicaid that do have a need. And if this social worker, discharge planner, this case manager at the hospital is referring you Medicaid regularly, she'll just have the conversation. Oh, you need to call Caring Hands. You need to call Care Choice. You need to call Visiting Angels or whoever it is, because that's who we partner with and that's who we work with regularly.
Yeah. Realistically, this isn't a question, but I'm curious from your side, like, because you've been doing this a long time. What do you think is going to be making the biggest impact and changes in the next year or two? Like, what do you think is going to start to happen? Because that's a
I think
question I
what's
get a
going
lot, and I don't deal a lot with Medicaid. It's just not,
to be either.
like, what do you think is going to happen if there are going to be changes? And even on
So
the VA side, we hear, I mean, I work heavily with the VA. A lot of our
a lot of my
clients
clients do too.
are really worried about the VA side.
So on the VA side, I'll touch on that one second. Um, Something that I've been saying for 13 years now, because I went through this when I had my agency. Like, what I love about you, Becky, unlike there's so many people that are in our space, but you're like me. You had a highly successful home care business yourself. I had a master level home care business back when the price of care was $23 an hour.
Yeah.
Right. So we were doing over $5 million based on the volume of business when the price was $23 an hour, because this was 2010, 2011. Oh, and by the way, America, right? That was also like the Great Recession, right?
Right.
Like nobody was buying anything. Houses were all up and down. Nobody could sell their houses, whatever. We still had a $5 million business then, right? At my company, Care Choice. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this is because when it comes to the VA, I learned the hard way, where the VA had a really good reimbursement rate. The VA was doing really good. And we took a lot of business that was VA. And then when the government decided to make changes in 2009 and 2010, the reimbursement wasn't as good anymore, or they were late with making payments. And you now all of a sudden we're floating $50,000 in VA payments, and we're not. Paradigm didn't exist. All these companies didn't exist back when I was doing this. So a lot of it we had to eat. A lot of it we had to write off. And so what I recommend people do when it comes to VA, because it's always feast or famine. Like right now, everyone's worried about the reimbursement because a lot of people went too into it. And now they're like, what am I going to do if they make cuts and changes? If they just laid off a whole bunch of VA workers, will there be a trickle effect down and my payment's going to be delayed? I don't know.
Right.
But if that does happen, the lesson that I learned from my business is don't allow more than maybe 20% of the total revenue coming into your business come from one payer source like the VA. So take the VA, but if I have a $1 million business, right, what does that mean? It means I shouldn't have more than 200,000 of that million VA. For the Medicaid folks that are listening, what's a good mix? I like 50-50. So if I have a $5 million business, 2.5 million Medicaid, 2.5 million private pay, that's a master level business. And so therefore as I grow my private pay, then take on more Medicaid. As I grow my private pay, then take on more VA, so that I always have a strong mix of private pay to offset any government changes and regulations. That's the way to run a smart business for the long term.
Have you ever, again, this is not a question. Have you ever worked with any
We're
agencies?
being real, baby.
We're now you just got my brain moving. And for anybody who didn't catch the earlier part, I am getting over the flu, which is why I sound like this. So I just want to make that very clear for everybody. If you don't know how I normally sound. Have you ever worked with any agencies that are 100% VA or 100% Medicaid? Have you ever worked with those agencies? And what's your advice to them?
Add private pay.
And
That's my advice.
what if
Add
that
private pay to
client
what you're
is
doing.
resistant and
If they're resistant,
they say no, hypothetically, the VA is where my heart is, and I want to dedicate my life to veterans. What do you do in those situations? Have you ever dealt with anybody like that?
I have one client who has a 8-figure a year master level business, all VA. And that was his thing. And so what I recommend people do, if you don't want to add the private pay to it and you just want to stay with the VA, or you don't want to add private pay, you just want to stay with the Medicaid, is you are going to have to get political. You're going to have to get with your local ombudsman. You're going to have to get local, your representative at the House level. You're going to have to get with the governor at the state level. You are going to have to get involved. You will have to make donations to people to get elected in. Like you're going to, I mean, I'm not kidding. You will have to get political. And you'll have to get political. And then as you go in with your horse, right, whoever you're voting for, whoever you're financially backing, stay with that person and lobby for Medicaid reimbursement. Lobby for the changes to your part of your payer source, because and why are you lobbying for it? You're lobbying for it not for yourself. You're part of it. It's your business, but you're lobbying it for all the patients you're taking care of. So when I look at my client who's this 8-figure a year Medicaid business, this individual, for him to be 8 figures a year, he's taking care of hundreds of veterans, not 100, hundreds of veterans. So when he's talking to the politicians, he's talking to the governor, he's talking to the House representatives, he's talking to the senators of his state. He's not saying, oh, I have 30 or 40 people. He's saying, if you make a change and I go out of business, you got 400 veterans that are not going to be able to get care. That's on you, politician. That's on you. That's on your, and I'll go and make the commercials. I'll be the first person, you're going to have to get political with it if you choose to stay 100% in it. And that's fine, because I think that we need advocates for our veterans. We need advocates for those who don't have the means to afford it. So while, yes, I'm saying grow it, and I'll say that's the easier way, because getting political, you have to get political, right? So we're trying to avoid politics, but the easier way is to add the private pay. But if you don't want to do that, you will have to get political, because then the government will have to see, especially at the state level, will have to see the value you bring to the veteran, the value you're bringing to the Medicaid. And then I've seen the government do special circumstances for people. And I've seen them do bulk payments, or, some kind of a bonus structure. I've seen those things happen for the bigger entities that exist out there who fight for it.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Good insight. All right. This question. My caregivers are worried about the recent changes or upcoming changes. What conversations should I be having with my team to keep morale up while we navigate this transition? So I will just chime in right away. If you know anything about me, I'm all about being transparent. Our jobs, the caregivers have enough to worry about, right? They're paycheck to paycheck. They're taking care of their families. They have multiple jobs. They're in school. We don't need to create any additional stress. Our job is to reassure them, this is not anything you need to worry about. We're fine, right? We are, but be transparent though. Let them know we're staying in front of it. We are following along with what we need to from a process standpoint, and we'll let you know of any changes. But my biggest piece of feedback to this question is be proactive. Don't wait for the questions to start coming in. Be proactive, whether it's a town hall, a newsletter, whatever your communication is, be proactive and let them know, hey guys, I want to put your minds at ease. This is nothing for you to worry about. We're fine. And reassure them in whatever capacity you need to. But my biggest thing is be proactive. Don't wait for them to come to you with this kind of insight and concerns. What do you think?
I agree with you 110%. You know, the thing that comes to mind to me is when 2020 happened and the world shut down. Thank you so
Yep.
much, Jody.
That's where
And when
my
the
brain
world
went
shut
when I saw
down,
this question
you
too.
know, yeah, all my staff, they were freaking out, you know, and like, what are we going to do and where are we going to go or whatever. And I didn't have the answer. But what I did say to them was I said that, you know, we have gotten through everything that we have had to get through in since we started the company in 2012, and we're going to get through this too. We're going to get through this together. Yay! Somebody made a sale. They're ringing the bell. And so, you know, I say go back to your core values and your mission statement, you know, and that's what I had Jody bring. And, you know, I texted her, I said, bring this in, please. And, you know, when I look at our core values and our mission statement, you know, we got through the pandemic and I didn't lay anybody off. I didn't fire them. We're healthcare consultants. So we were part of that essential workers group, you know, and yeah, we had to work remote and we had to figure things out, but you know, we got through it together. That was a personal growth moment. You
Yeah.
know, we believed in each other. That's one of our core values. You know, we walked in integrity. We continued to put our clients first. And so use this fear and anxiety as a strengthening of your company culture. Go back to your core values and go back to your mission statements and remind your caregivers. All of you have great core values. So you remind your caregivers of your great core values. And, you know, we're going to get through this together. We're here for you because just like Mrs. Smith, the patient, is our priority, so is Jennifer, the caregiver who provides for Mrs. Smith.
Yep.
And so you're always going to have a job. As the owner, I'm going to figure out a way to make sure that you still get paid every single day. Instill that confidence, even if that means we close the door ourselves and in private, we sit down on our knees and we cry because we're afraid ourselves. That's not easy to do. That is not easy to do. I will tell you when I remember when I shut everything down in 2020, I had a boot camp that was supposed to be the 18th of March. Well,
Oh,
the world shut down. I had
yeah.
242 people to come to this event. I already spent $100,000 that I couldn't get back. And there was no way for me to have it. I did a virtual event and it was like a garbage because nobody paid attention because everyone was freaking about the pandemic. I sent everybody home to work from home. And I sat in my office by myself and I grabbed stuff and I got on my knees and I prayed to God and I cried on I have a couch right over here. I cried on that couch,
Yeah.
you know, after everybody had left behind closed doors because I didn't know it was going to happen. But I knew that if we were together and I stayed strong in my own faith, I was going to get through this. And here I
Oh, I
am 5
remember
years later
those.
today, almost to the day, March 20th, right? Here we are.
I those days as an agency owner, I remember we sent everybody home too, and it was it was I don't there's no words to explain it, but yeah, the amount of times I cried behind the scenes because I was so fearful, not only of our caregivers, but the health of our clients and what that meant for them in isolation. And there's so much weight that agency owners carry, which is why we developed our dinner series. And not to get into that, but that's why we have that. It's a support system because as an agency owner, especially if you're independent, you don't have a group of people that you can count on for advice and just to pick their brain, and that's why. And I wish I had that back then, but I remember it was awful. Same thing. But yeah,
Right.
our job is to show up for the caregivers, and my philosophy at my agency was always our customer service is equally as important for the caregivers as much as it is for the clients. They
Right.
deserve just as much because they're the ones going out and actually doing the hard work, right?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, my advice to you, if you're on this call, is be proactive. Don't wait. Let them know, hey, we know this might be changing, but don't worry, we've got it. If we have to pivot, we'll pivot. But don't wait. And I
Right.
remember too, like when our agency was in the suburbs of Chicago. And so when all of that stuff was happening and Black Lives Matters was happening and there were riots in Chicago, even
I
in our
remember.
suburb where we were, like businesses were being broken into, and it was a scary time. And I, as the owner, proactively reached out to all of the caregivers and said, like, if you're in the city and you can't get out, you just need to communicate. You need to let us know, and you need to let us know what you need, right? I think what agencies often fail on from a communication standpoint is we only communicate to our caregivers when we need something and when it's about scheduling. So you as the owner or the operator, whoever's overseeing the office, take this as an opportunity to actually connect with people. Let them come to you about how they're feeling, about what they're scared about. And it'll help actually strengthen your relationship with your caregivers and build that trust. And I remember that time really well. And while we all were scared and didn't know what was happening, I also didn't have to lay anybody off. Um, and we were busier than ever. And I think really good agencies actually thrived during
They
COVID,
thrive,
right?
right?
But that was, no one knew what to do with it, right? And like you said, that 1%, you figure it out, you do it, you make it happen, right? All right, we have a live question that
I love it.
were you gonna say something?
Well, I was just going to add to what you're saying
Yeah,
there, and that's exactly it, Becky. Like it's the saying that we've all heard before. It's not courage to make the right decision when there is no fear. Courage is making the right decision, doing the right thing in the face of fear, right? So right now, with the anxiety and that your caregivers are having, you assure them that things are going to work out, even if that means that behind closed doors you're worried, but you put your worry out there. You have ways to deal with it, whether it be faith, prayer, meditation, whatever. But that you have to move forward in confidence. That's what leadership is.
yeah,
It's in this day and age, it's required to be a strong leader. And as the economy is kind of turning a little bit, it makes me think back to when I had my agency when it was the recession. I joined the agency. It wasn't my agency initially. I joined in 2005. Well, oh 05, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Well, we all know what happened during that time. And we continue to grow year after year, even though the economy was in the toilet, which is to the question that come up. Do you want to
yeah,
read the question?
yeah. No, it's a good segue. What is the future of private pay home care? During this recessionary times of uncertainty in layoffs and inflation and losing stock and 401k portfolios, everyone is watching all of their expenses, especially senior care.
So I have some great insights. I literally was on the phone yesterday. I'm very fortunate and blessed at this point. I have Home Care Evolution, but I am also sitting on the board of directors for 4 different companies, right? 2 technology companies, a rum company, and then a device company that's placed inside people's homes. While I was speaking to about investing and talking to people who are investing millions of dollars in some of these companies yesterday, I reached out to the regional director, Northeast regional director of TD Bank, and I had a lengthy conversation with him about being able to fund care for the elderly. What's going on out there? What's happening? Because right now in our country, we have a situation where the majority of the wealth of our country is in the hands of the baby boomers and the generation before them, right? But where is that wealth? And it turns out that almost all of these folks, they're what I call house rich, cash poor, right? So they all have a house that they bought in the 70s and the 80s for $50,000, $100,000 that in today's market is worth $600,000. And they own it outright. And
Mhm.
so there are a ton of tools and vehicles. I know people don't like the term reverse mortgage, but when I had during the recession, we had people who used a reverse mortgage and who were very happy with it, who got care. You can take an HLOC out loan. You could get a line of credit and use the house as equity. There's so many different vehicles that people can use. So let's say, and this is a situation that comes up regularly, because I just talked about this with somebody recently. You have a son or a daughter who lives in the house with the parent, and it's the parent's house. And the parent needs care. Son and daughter is in their 40s, 50s. They don't have a retirement. They don't have any money. The mom's passing away. They're going to leave the house to the son and daughter. What is that person supposed to do? Well, if mom has a life insurance policy, let's say it's a $100,000 life insurance policy, you can get a loan against the house, get the care for your mother with the loan. When your mother passes away, that $100,000 is going to go to you as the son. You would have to pay taxes on it, but you could pay your mom's debt back, and then you would get the house, and you don't pay taxes on it until you sell the house, right? So there's so many different things, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. but there's so many ways for people to be able to fund care. You have to be creative.
Yep.
I recommend that every single agency out there talks to financial planners, talks to your local bank, talks to elder law attorneys and other people who do estate planning, because those are the folks that can help find creative ways to fund care for people who don't have the cash, but they have assets. And our elderly, our seniors, they may not have the cash, but many of them have the assets.
Well, and not only that's brilliant, like so creative. So many of the areas you mentioned, the lawyers, the financial planners, not only will they become a resource for you as an agency to help your clients fund their care, but also they're really good referral sources too for you, right? And so that's usually where I tell people, like, when you're getting started, build those relationships with those guys. They're much easier to get into and have coffee with or have a meeting with, right? As opposed to walking directly into a hospital system when no one knows who you are yet. So those are easier referral sources to build. So not only are you going to build resources that are going to help people, but you're also going to be building referral sources. So it's a brilliant twofold approach there. I love that. Cool. I hope we answered your question, the anonymous question that was answered. Anything else on that one before I get into another question from somebody?
No, I mean, that's totally fine. It's just, I always say, and I always joke, I tend to be a little bit blunt. So I say, take that to the bank, because that came from the regional vice president of TD Bank, which is, a multi-billion-dollar bank up and down the East Coast. So I'm not like, Steve the Hurricane, you may have just heard about me. Who am I? Yeah, I've been doing this for 13 years, but the regional vice president of one of the largest banks in America said that. So, tap into the equity in those homes, baby.
Yeah, be creative. I love it. I love it. Yeah, people, I mean, we often just look at things at surface level, right? But I was always taught, and this is why I tell my daughter, there is always a solution to every problem. You just have to be creative. And my mom taught me that. She said there's always a way to make something happen. I grew up, if you know anything about my story, I grew up in poverty. We didn't have a lot of money, food stamps, but my mom always figured out a way to keep me. I was in every sport activity. I never knew how poor we were, right? Because my mom always found a way. And that's what I tell my daughter. There was always a solution to every problem. You just have to either find the right person that can help you or be creative.
Amen.
So I love it. Brilliant. All right, cool. Let's go into this question.
Sure.
I started my agency to help people who couldn't afford care. How do I stay true to that mission while adapting to these funding cuts? So it kind of goes in, that's very similar to the first question, but I wanted to bring this one up because so many of us started this because we care, because we had a personal tie, we had an experience with a loved one, good or bad, that fueled us to take this step into this industry. Very rarely do I talk to people that just talk, they're like, I thought this would be a good business opportunity. There's usually a story, right? Very few. So I really want to dive into this a little bit deeper because I want to help people understand that you still can stay true. I think I had a conversation with somebody earlier today, and they say things like, I don't want to be the biggest agency. I don't want to be the agency with money signs in my eyes. And what I always tell people is there's nothing wrong with wanting to make money and be profitable. There's nothing dirty about that. You can still run a very successful multi-million-dollar business, right? And still you're looking for something to show us and still be profitable and still give back and do a lot of good. You don't have to be a $20 million agency to do it. You can be a $2 million agency and still have a very nice lifestyle, right? But it's about what I tell people is, and I'm going to show something, Steve. It's not a book I wrote, but although heads up, there is something coming down the road. I reference this book. So Simon Sinek, Start With Why, because and this is what we give out in all of our new, when we start a new client, I want people to understand this because when you explain the why behind anything, right, it humanizes the story. It humanizes why we do what we do, right? So whenever you're feeling threatened or just there's no will left, right? And just completely defeated. Go back to your why. Why did you start this? You didn't start it because of the money. You started because you wanted to help people. And there's still avenues that we're going to be able to help people. Maybe not in the capacity that you initially dreamt of when you started this agency, but we're going to have to pivot potentially. And we're going to have to be creative, like you said, but always go back to your why, go back to your roots. Like you said, go back to your mission statements, but go back to the basics as to why you even are here. Why did you start your agency? But go ahead. You were going to show us something.
Well, no, it's along the same exact lines. Like, I get the bleeding heart. I want to help people who can't afford the services. I want to help people, and that's why, I picked up the Why We Care book that I wrote with a bunch of my clients because, you know, I changed the name of the client that I talked about in the different scenarios that I gave here. So it says, a married couple, the wife had a stroke, and it was Janice and Ken. That's not their real name, but I changed it to Janice and Ken to protect their identity. But the story was real. And, Janice had a massive stroke. Janice needed me. Janice didn't qualify for Medicaid. So she had no choice. Janice spent her entire life preparing for her retirement. So she had the resources to afford the care that she needed, but she still needed the care. So I totally understand. And you should never start a business in home care with the dollar signs in your eyes. It's the care that you're charging. And from a private pay standpoint, when I talk with my clients all the time, I always say, what does it cost you to provide the care? And you add 20% to it, that's your profit. Whatever it costs you, 20% is profit. That means that's what you should be charging, right? 20% profit. That allows you to be able to pay your staff. That allows you to give raises. It allows you to expand the new office territory and everything else. And that's why you started your business. So you're charging what you have to charge. For the person who doesn't qualify for Medicaid, that person still needs help. The scenario that I talked about in this exact situation was this, Janice, I almost said the lady's real name. Janice almost had to choose between living in a nursing home and paying for it because she had the resources or coming home with 24/7 care. And someone had to live in their house. Ken, the husband, he didn't want that, but Janice needed the care. He couldn't provide it. So he opted to bring someone in, and we allowed Janice, and to Janice's dying day, I went to the house. All the stories of me going to their house and washing and waxing their car when I was in my 20s and I was a kid. And I got to know that my grandparents, when she died, he asked me if I would be a pallbearer at her funeral. Oh. So I was one of the 6 men to carry Janice for the final time as we laid her to rest. That's because I cared. That's because we're doing it because we care. So yes, in some instances, when it comes to private pay, there's gonna be an exchange of money. That doesn't mean that you ever stop caring. Right. If anything, you should care just as much, if not more. But you should always care about the person and remember that just because somebody has the means, they still need help. It's all about the care. So put that your why is the reason, which I'm just echoing what you said. I don't want to take up too much time because we have so many questions here, and I hope people are getting good feedback.
Okay, this is a perfect question for you. I've always struggled with selling our services. How can someone like me, who's been more care focused, become comfortable with having those private pay conversations?
2 ways to do it. One way is you have a system and a process that does the selling for you so that you can focus on what you do best. That's what I focus on with my clients all the time. Here's your process, X, Y, and Z. The process does the selling. So you just go through step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. Okay, now you got a customer, right? So the steps automatically walk people through making a decision where they say yes. That's a sales process, right? The other aspect of it is when you hire somebody to do that for you. That could be a position of need in your organization. So maybe you don't like having the conversation. Great. So I'm going to hire a business development person. That business development person, they could be my closer. I can have that person start off with it. When I came into Care Choice back in 2005, Brian had been in business for 4 years before he had me. Brian was not a sales guy. Jennifer, his office manager, she was not a salesperson. I'm a salesperson. I'm the one who created our sales process. I'm the one who created our inquiry management process. And as a result, I'm the one who went out and started closing all the cases. And sure enough, our census grew. And then in time, I taught Brian and Jennifer and Kate and Kim and everybody else who came on this process, so that then the process did the selling for us. But those are the two ways to do it. You get a process that does the closing for you, or you hire somebody who is comfortable having those conversations and let them close for you.
What do you think is the biggest misconception when it comes to selling home care?
Biggest misconception when it comes to selling home care is people think that you're in it for greed. That is the biggest misconception. And when, as part of like the sales process, when I teach people to do it, I always talk about, and I'll just start going through it with you since we're talking about it.
Give us the
One of the most important parts of the sales process is the initial aspect of it. When you sit down with the patient, the patient's family, don't go right into the process. You go into finding out why you're there. Get to know the patient. Talk about the weather. Talk about the food if you're in a hospital, because everybody complains about the food, right? You got to remember that this person that I'm sitting here next to has been through hell and back. In a lot of instances, this person wishes whatever happened to them killed them. Like I remember sitting there and people telling me, why am I still alive? This stroke should have killed me. Instead, now I'm alive. And that's what I'm walking into. So you don't go right into your presentation. You gotta get to know the person, get the feels, get the concrete, why am I here? How are we going to help this person? How are we going to bring it home? Let's set up the goals, etc. Then you want to go into first explaining the sales process, and then you go into the history of the company. Now, I'm not going to spend the whole time going through it because it's like 90 minutes for me to teach you how to do it. But you talk about the company because you let them know why you started the business. When you are a representative of the company, after you go through the history of the company, started in 2005, blah, 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 so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. We started it because the owner, blah, 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 blah. Now, Steve, I represent the company because was the perfect blend. And this is my true story, Becky, so you know. I joined Care Choice in 2005 as a director of business development. And for me, this was the perfect blend of my professional experience, as I've always had sales and marketing jobs, and my college education, as I went to school to be a minister and to be a pastor. And while I'm not a pastor today, that pastoral training really helps me to be empathetic and relate to my patients with what they're going through, because whether or not somebody is religious or not is irrelevant. At the end of life, it's a very spiritual, delicate time. And that pastoral training really helps me to help them. That's why I represent Care Choice, and that's why I love my job. And that's a true story. That, like, I went to school to be a pastor. I preach on Sundays, right? So I'm not lying. I'm telling the truth. And when people hear you, and this is why you represent the company, that makes them feel comfortable because they're buying you. They're trusting you to take care of their loved one. They're trusting you with their own personal care. So when you do that, it takes away the dollars and cents. And the dollars and cents just become a formality of the need. And that's why I'm here. That's, and I know I went on, so I apologize if I'm long-winded.
Apologize about it. It's good stuff.
I'm getting passionate.
That's what this is about. And this is why I adore you so much. I think I agree. When you go into, and this is what I coach on too, when you go in for an assessment, it is not, I just did this big research study for a presentation I'm doing. Most people lose assessments, lose those clients because they're being too clinical. That's not your opportunity to be clinical, right? That is your opportunity. That is your opportunity to connect. And so if you have to get all of the history and the medical information prior, and that in person is a chance for them to build trust with you, right? Because especially when you're dealing with any cognitive concern, you need to be talking to the person, not about them. So that's an opportunity for you to build trust. Yeah, the weather. What do you like to eat? Tell me about this picture. Is this your grandkid? Build that trust, because as I would always say, that assessment process, yes, it's about you getting information, but it's also a chance for them to interview you and feel really good about you. So you can always get all the background information another time, that in-person time together is where you're building trust more than anything. And yeah, get into why you started the agency. They know what you do high level. They don't know all that you can do at that point, but let it flow organically is my biggest piece. And I always say, and I don't know if you're going to have a different opinion because I come from sales too, but I feel that the best salespeople out there are not selling anything. They are solving problems, right? They are finding solutions and they are being genuine, right? And I actually used to work for cars.com. So I worked with car dealers. And I think car dealers get a very bad rep because everyone always thinks the car dealers are the cutthroat, we're gonna, really sell you. And they're not. They're, generally speaking, they're really nice people and they care and they have families and they're working to support their families. But that whole theory, right, of the car salesperson approach, right? It doesn't exist. It shouldn't. And in this industry, it's about connection. It's truly about building trust. So that's my theory. When someone's uncomfortable selling, don't sell. Be yourself. Have a really strong solution, have a strong product, have a really great set of caregivers and a great team. There's no selling needed. And have a great follow-up process, right? Which I'm sure you also will agree to. But that's my advice. Don't sell.
We are speaking the same language.
Yeah,
I'm just saying sell yourself, but it's the
of
transparency.
course.
It's be the caring person, and that's what they're buying you,
Yeah,
not your company, and that's
exactly.
everything.
Which actually ties into this live question we got then. Let's just dive into that. In an extremely crowded private pay space, home care, in crowded private pay space, home care space, franchise and independence, what's a few marketing plans and activities that can make you stand out and earn facility referrals to amongst the players? And the reason I think that ties into this is because home care, and I say this all the time, home care is home care is home care. At the end of the day, most home care agencies do the same thing. I don't care if you're visiting angels, a home instead, independent, I don't care. ADLs are ADLs. You're all going to do the same services to an extent, right? Some agencies have other service lines and other things that they can provide, but what's going to make you different is you, which is exactly what we are just talking about. It's you, it's your team, it's your why. But so what are some marketing ideas, activities that can help you stand out? So I'll let you go first and then I have some. I know you're
So,
looking for something again.
and thank you, Becky. I'm going to hold up here like, client, 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 client right here in here, right? And the reason why I'm showing you this is because all of my clients that are on these covers of magazines, this lady's in Houston, Texas, crowded marketplace. This lady's in Dallas, Texas, crowded marketplace. Denver, Colorado. The gentleman I showed you on the inside is in Seattle, Washington. These are massive markets with hundreds, some of them even 1,000 competitors in their space. How are they standing out? I could go on for an hour. I'll just give one thing, and then Becky, you should share one too. I say specialize. If you think about a specialist, if you have cancer, you got to go to an oncologist. If you have a foot issue, you got to go to a podiatrist. If you have an issue with your skin, you got to go to a dermatologist, or an orthopedic for your shoulder, whatever it is. Any ologist for any body part, and you need that specialist. Well, when you call that specialist, they got more business than they can handle. A lot of times the specialist isn't even taking new patients because they're so inundated. So if you're in a market where it's so saturated, be the dementia specialist, be the congestive heart failure specialist, be the stroke specialist. As a matter of fact, I'll go out here and just say, people have asked me 100 times over the last 13 years, Steve, if you were to ever open up another home care agency, what would you do differently? I would just be the stroke specialist agency. I know more about, I'm not a doctor, I'm not anything clinical, but I know more about strokes than any other diagnosis and how to manage it and how to take care of it long-term. It is the number one cause of long-term disability. I would be the stroke specialist in my market. There's 800 agencies out there, but I would be the only one in my territory that specializes in stroke. Every person with the stroke is going to call me first. And that's more than enough for me to handle.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I agree. I think you stand out by really knowing who you are as an agency. So that kind of ties into what you're saying. With us, with my agency, so my agency was named the #1 agency in North America by Active Home Care Pulse, Activate Insights. We did that strategically. That was not, I mean, I didn't expect to be #1, but I knew I wanted to be in the top 100, right? We did that by really knowing who we were as our voice. We did that by, and I was an independent, so I could go wherever we wanted. But we really had a very small area that we wanted to cover because we wanted to be small. We wanted to be small in geography, right? We wanted to be boutique, which for us meant very high touch points, very elevated customer service, white glove approach. We were much more of a hospitality company more than we were home care. And that's what made us stand out. So I would say, know who you are, know your voice, and know what's going to make you different, whether it's a stroke specialization, whether, dementia, like, I don't know how many, 90% of our clients had some form of cognitive concern, right? But then take it a step further. Let your caregivers get specialized in that too. And that's a huge selling point. When you're going to meet with a family and they're maybe meeting with 2 or 3 different agencies, and what's going to set you apart is, well, we do our state mandated training, but also we go further than that. And we have our caregivers, they could choose to be specialized, and a lot of the online training programs have that option for you. You can do on-site trainings. You can do whatever you want, right? But go a step further than what your state is requiring if you're in a licensed state. And then also what we talked about earlier with embedding yourself in the community and using the different estate planning attorneys, wills, trusts, all of the different specialized professionals in your community. Use those as not only referral sources, but how do you partner together? So this goes into your question about activities. Partner with those specialized professionals and bring the community educational events and sessions and things that will help not only bring out your brand presence, but you're also going to be reaching a whole other network of community through their platform, right? And so from my perspective, yes, I'm in Chicago. I mean, the competition here is fierce, right? But we didn't focus on our competition. We focused on what we could do the best. And we really just focused on that. And we focused on really thriving relationships. I didn't do a lot of marketing. I didn't do marketing really at all. Our relationships spoke for us. And that's where I think you can really stand out and earn the facility referrals that you're asking about. I hope that answered your question. But I think you and I are so aligned with how we think from like a sales perspective, right? Which is so funny because we have such different personalities too, right? Like you're so rah and you want to get in. I'm kind of like, let's just talk. But it's interesting, right? We have such different ways, but at the end of the day, it's really about building those relationships and knowing who you are, right? All right.
100%.
So we are out of time. So, like I told you, we had 15 questions. We got through, I think, 3. So that's great.
Plus 2 live.
2 live. Okay, so we got through 5. But I hope this was helpful. And I think what I took away from this conversation is that there's going to be changes, and we're going to have to pivot like we always do in this industry, right? With COVID, we pivoted. With the recession, we pivot. We're always going to be pivoting. And as an agency, you're used to it. Your caregivers make you pivot daily. So keep operating like you do, but now is the time to start expanding your payer type. If you're really very heavy in Medicaid, start diving into private pay. Start getting comfortable with those conversations, right? And Steve and myself are here to be resources for you every step of the way. So any final words you want to leave people with? Steve the Hurricane?
The last thing I
Trademark.
want to say when it comes to like the changes in the government, right? And this is very, very tough, but we have to make sure that we are focused on actual changes and not letting the fear of a change be what drives us. No matter where you go on social media, no matter where you go on the television news stations, they are spewing fear, 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 fear. You gotta, prepare, hope for the best, prepare for the worst, right? You can diversify your payer sources, as you said, as we've been talking about for the whole hour here. You can diversify your payer sources right now. You don't have to wait for anything. But while the talking and the fear mongering is happening, don't let it deter you from what you're trying to accomplish. And then if something does happen, you'll be able to embrace because you prepared for it by diversifying now. That's the thing I would say in closing. Don't let a fear of something. That's why we wanted to do it. Like, don't let it drive you crazy. Don't let it keep you up at night because it hasn't happened yet. So just go forward, but be ready ahead of time so that if it happens, you'll be able to weather the storm.
I'm so grateful that you were able to join us today for this. How can people reach you if they have any questions with like your assistance? How can people reach you?
Best way to do would be go to my website, homecareevolution.com. We have a boot camp coming up over the summer on all things sales and marketing. It's actually very timely right now. It's our referral master's boot camp. So if you've been to a boot camp before, it's all specific on sales and marketing topics and scaling and growing your business. And then find me online. I'm on LinkedIn, Steve Hurricane. If you look up Steve the Hurricane on Facebook and Instagram, I'm there too. So if you just look up Steve the Hurricane, you find me on Facebook and Instagram. I have a check mark, so you'll know it's actually me. I pay for the verified account because there's so many copycats out there. People actually copycat me, like, follow the real one, right? But yeah, that's how you can find me. And I'm going to share a lot of inspirational stuff and messages. And I always have my drink with the Hurricanes. I got a new magazine coming out in 2 weeks, so you'll get the latest updated version of that with some great stories. One of them, which I'm really excited about, is disaster preparedness, because one of my clients who went through Hurricane Milton, Hurricane Helene, and then like a week later, Hurricane Milton came through, and she talks about how to be prepared for the storm. So
yeah. All right. Well, I'm Becky Reel. You can find me. My website's Reel Home Care Consulting, and it's REEL, the fishing reel. And if you're looking to connect with other agency owners, we do have an upcoming dinner series in Scottsdale, April 23rd. So if you'd like more information, you can find me on all the socials as well. But Steve, such an honor to spend time with you. Thank you. I hope you found this valuable, and we'll be emailing it out by tomorrow. But we hope you found this enjoyable while you get back to your day. Thank you again.